this is something that has to be taken extremely seriously. Like a lot of these companies need to actually do a full entire audit of all of their materials and make sure that they're up to par with kind of what the new standards are today. So I actually feel for a lot of the pharma companies who are scrambling to try to implement all of these new guidelines and legal and regulatory shifts. But it's going to be something that I think everybody might want to buckle up because it's only going to continue to tighten.
Hello and welcome to the Supreme Pod. My name is Eric Southwell and I'm the CMO here at Supreme Group. So at Supreme Group, we help life science, pharma, and healthcare companies around the world with their marketing, branding, and communications. Today, I'm joined by Shannon Carlson and Olly Johnston, and we're discussing the recent FDA regulatory shift in DTC advertising for pharma companies. Now, Olly and Shannon are two close friends of mine at work. Love working with them. Shannon Carlson is the president and founder of Curator24, and Curator24 has been helping pharma and biotech companies with branding and marketing for over 10 years. Shannon, is that about right?
Or 20, yeah.
20 works too. Yeah. And Shannon, I don't want to embarrass you on this podcast, but I found a couple of awards. I've seen Startup of the Year for Curator, Enterprise Woman of the Year, and the Transformational Leader Award. So it's super awesome to be able to talk to you. I don't know if I missed anything, Shannon. Does that sound like it sort of sums you up in Curator pretty well?
Yeah, I think we'll stop there. That sounds good enough.
Okay, awesome. And then Olly, I know you need no introduction, but Olly Johnston is a relatively new executive vice president in charge of platform growth for Supreme Group. And Olly, you have a ton of experience helping pharma, healthcare, tons of agency experience.
Yeah, so I've been deeply involved with the industry of pharma over the course of the past 10 years, navigating through a lot of the regulatory landscape. So if you've heard of it, I've probably seen it, and thrilled to share a little bit of perspective today.
Awesome. Thank you, Olly. So appreciate you guys both joining. And man, some super crazy stuff happening with the new administration, some big time regulatory shifts in the FDA, and it's going to affect, I've already seen Olly actually sent me in Slack 15 ads that pharma companies are going to have to adjust and take down. So I was going through them. Honestly, when I saw the commercials, I was actually watching some of them. I'm like, these don't seem that bad or that crazy or outlandish. So Shannon, for anybody who might be listening, I would really like your take. What is kind of the quick recap of what's going on right now and why it matters for pharma companies?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think, as we've all seen, the letters have been issued and it's just the first pass at it. But the FDA, it's kind of raising the bar on its direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising. And I think they're really kind of getting to the place where they're really wanting pharmaceutical companies to be authentic and really speak to patients, consumers in a way that they understand it, and making sure that all of the claims are backed up with the right data and that they can digest the information that pharmaceutical companies are delivering in a way that's, I don't want to say authentic because it's not authentic, but in a way that they can really digest what's happening. So they're really tightening the leash on everything that's being put out there, from a digital, a social, TV campaigns, things like that. So it matters because the compliance threshold is really shifting. Once what might have been kind of acceptable is now going to be flagged, it's going to be considered at risk, and letters of warning will be issued. So I think that's kind of the high level of what's happening. And it's really a fascinating shift of where we were just a few months ago to where we are today.
I think what's interesting to me is how fast it's all happened. I feel like sometimes you hear about stuff, like we heard about this a lot with cookie tracking, where if you don't have these cookie blockups on your browser, you're going to get a $20 million fine and all of this. And then nothing really happened, like nobody that I know got fined, but these letters are going out. Are they not? Like, do you have actual people you work with in the space who've already gotten letters?
Yes, we do. And it's much different than kind of the cookie situation that happened. This is action has to be taken or there's going to be severe consequences. So I wish it was like kind of the cookie dilemma, but unfortunately, this is something that has to be taken extremely seriously. It has to be done in a very swift and effective way of really going back in and doing a full audit. Like a lot of these companies need to actually do a full entire audit of all of their materials and make sure that they're up to par with kind of what the new standards are today. So it's a pretty serious thing, and it's definitely something that isn't going to go away. And I think we're going to only see it continue to tighten, which isn't, it's not necessarily a bad thing in the long run for patients, but it definitely is a big shift for pharmaceutical companies. So overall, I think pharmaceutical companies will be able to build more trust with patients. So I think if they want to look at it from kind of a positive perspective, I think it's going to help them do that in the long run. But in the short run, it's pretty painful.
So do a lot of the marketing materials that they currently have out, like let's say you're a pharma company and you spent $10 million on a TV commercial and you get an FDA letter, do they have to stop immediately if
Yes.
they have contracts with big public networks and publishers and stuff like that? They just don't have a commercial anymore? Is that how it works?
Yeah, they'll have to pause their media. I mean, the great news within media spends is they'll be able to, shift their media spend, and it takes a lot of work and they have to create a whole new strategy around it. But they'll reallocate those dollars based on kind of the FDA letters that were distributed, but they will need to pause their media. They'll need to pull down all of those assets and then recreate the assets to align with the new compliance laws and regulations. So it is a big deal. It is a heavy lift for a lot of these pharmaceutical companies that are already strapped for resources and time and people, truthfully. It's doable. It's tough. So I actually feel for a lot of the pharma companies who are scrambling to try to implement all of these new guidelines and legal and regulatory shifts. But it's going to be something that I think everybody might want to buckle up because it's only going to continue to tighten. And so as we think about how we partner with our regulatory teams and we think about how we're stating things, how we're making claims, and just really being more thoughtful about being, I would say, overly transparent to patients, HCPs, anybody who we're targeting with that advertising. Obviously, for this one, it's direct to consumers, but overall, I think in the end, it's actually a great thing for patients, and it's a way for companies to really build on a more credible, more viable approach to meeting consumers where they are.
So, Shannon, let's say you're the CMO of a large pharmaceutical company. You come into work on Monday, having just heard the recent updates from the FDA. What steps are you taking as the CMO of this pharma company to minimize the damage and to protect the company?
I mean, me as a person, the first step I'm doing is I'm rallying my team together to make sure that we all understand what we're tasked with doing. Also, making sure that I understand from a resources standpoint how we can accomplish this goal in such a short time period. And then because I am the way I am, I would be looking at my people to make sure that we could efficiently and positively handle this in a way that didn't drown my team, so we could get this taken care of in a very efficient way. So I would, of course, you take that letter, you have legal and compliance and all the different people pulled together in a room. You have your team pulled together. And I think you've got to really invigorate your team around the benefits of what this can do for your organization long term. So always looking at what the positive can be that comes out of it. But it really is about rallying the right team and the right people to accomplish such a heavy lift in a very short time period.
What is the positive of this, in your opinion?
I do. I think it's going to make the advertising better for consumers, for patients. I think it's going to help them understand it better. I think it's going to be more digestible. I think it's going to push education at the forefront versus it being a supporting factor in some of these campaigns. So overall, I do think it's a great thing for patients. Ideally, it would be great if the FDA could have let people know, like, this is going to be coming. Here's how we're going to be doing it. Here's what we're going to be looking for, so that it would give pharma companies the right time and resources to address this in a thoughtful, more pragmatic way. But that's not how it happens. You kind of have to jump in the fire and fix it. But I think if people want to be proactive, it's about, even if you didn't get a letter, take a step back and look at your own language and look at your own tools and resources and try to be one step ahead of where you think the FDA may start to tighten, because they will, some of those different regulations and rules.
So, Shannon, if you had to boil it all down, what does this regulatory shift really mean for how we should approach patients in D2C advertising going forward?
I think that's a great question. Truthfully, the heart of kind of all of this, at the heart of the FDA's regulatory shift, it's really about making it more patient-centric. If you want to kind of put it into kind of steps, right? It really comes down to just using plain language in a way that people can understand it. So when you're dealing with some type of a disease, you're already having a difficult time interpreting what's being told to you. You're trying to understand everything about the disease, about the drug, about all the things that you have going on. And so we need to make sure that when we're talking to patients, that we're making it really easy for them to understand and very clear. So eliminating the jargon, eliminating the chaos, and just being very simple in the way that we speak to them. I think the second thing is really about balance. We just can't talk about the upside. We have to be able to present both the benefits and the risks. And so patients understand the full scope of what the picture looks like. And then third is really that educational role. So campaigns should focus on raising awareness and giving patients really the tools to have better, more informed conversations with their doctors. If we can really think about shifting our messaging into an educational voice, it's going to not only give patients the tools that they need, but it's also going to help them kind of understand their disease state, understand the drug that they may be prescribed. Overall, kind of that education is a huge piece in helping patients meet them where they are in their journey. And then truthfully, fourth is really about providing support beyond the ad. So if a patient sees the ad, how are we connecting people to patient support programs? How are we offering them affordable programs so they can afford the drug that they're being prescribed? And then resources to actually help them in real life. And so if we think about, I always say, like, put yourself in the shoes of being that patient and like, what would be the things that you need to be successful to cure your disease? And what would they need to understand about the drug that they're taking that's going to impact their life? And so many of these pharma companies have really great patient support programs. If we can kind of focus a little bit on that versus so much of the drug, I think not only can we build a better relationship with patients, but we can build that trust and also give the support that patients need to succeed. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Most of these pharma companies, patients really are at the center of everything they do. And so I think by highlighting that and by helping patients find those patient support programs, we're not only helping the patient population, but we're helping really the industry and humans in general get to a better place. And then truthfully, it kind of all ladders back to trust. So if we are being really upfront in our messaging and we're delivering patient support programs and we're thinking about that educational layer with patients, we're really building trust as an organization, as a company to work with patients in kind of a time when they need us most. So trust, this really, I know it's tough as like if you're sitting in a pharma company right now and you kind of just got slapped with this letter and you're having to update every single piece of material that you have for patients, it's a huge responsibility and lift to do that in such a fast, effective way. But I think if you can kind of keep in mind at the end of the day, this is not only helping you build a deeper trust with your patient population, but it's going to help build that long-term relationship. And I think that's what matters. And so if we can take kind of the negative of what happened and focus on the good or the positive outcome, I think we're going to end up in a much better place as a whole.
I'm wondering, in your opinion, what do you think of all the things you listed? Like some of the things you talked about were plain language, listing the pros and cons, the benefits and the side effects. And then you mentioned, support groups and stuff like that. What is the part of it where most people have the biggest change in their ads and marketing as it stands? Like, is it not highlighting their support groups? Is it those risks, or is it all of them? Are they all kind of in violation right now?
Yeah, I think it depends on I've seen a few different examples of the the ads that got flagged with letters. And it's for very different reasons. So some of it is the language is very complicated, but then there's other things where there was one situation not in my client's ad. I'll kind of add that in there, but in a different ad where it was like they said that the patient didn't look sad enough for the disease that they had. And so they were basically selling hope in a place that the patient shouldn't be as hopeful. I'm summarizing it in a nice way. But so I think it's about really just making sure that ads don't deliver on something that they can't follow through on.
That's a really critical element, which is like, I like the plain language part, Shannon, but so much of the complexity was actually based off of the fair balance for like requirements, right? That was why it always seemed so full of medicalese and really, really challenging sometimes. But the creating the wrong impression for what a drug can do and deliver on, I mean, that is a bit smoke and mirrors, to be honest. Like that example you just gave about selling hope when the reality is it may just be management, that's a good thing at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Well, and I think, I've been in this industry for a really long time, as have all of you. And think about like the jargon that we hear every day and we become accustomed to, but think about how much we still have to look up because it's
Yeah.
so deep and heavy in whether it's medical terminology or
Hmm.
drug and disease state awareness information. Like it's not that they're very complex disease states, they're very complex drugs. And so when we go to speak to someone who doesn't sit and listen to this type of
Yeah.
vernacular all day long, it's extremely overwhelming in a moment when they're already overwhelmed with what's happening to their own body. And so, I think they always say like you should be speaking to the general population at a third grade level. And so if we think about different pharma ads that we've all seen, right, on TV or online, there's a lot of words that are thrown around that are well above what most people would know in their everyday life. And so I do think this is an opportunity to bring down the
Yeah.
jargon, bring down the conversation into a place where everybody can understand and engage in a way that people can digest what they're being told in a very difficult time.
I noticed that a lot of the ads that were flagged were big TV ads. They were
Mhm.
the biggest channel, I would say, that was impacted as well as social and influencer to an extent. So if I was a pharma marketer and I get a letter and it's pointing to my TV ad, how much of all of my other materials, my patient brochures, my patient support programs, and so on and so forth, how much of that is usable? Or is it a complete reset, even though they maybe just flagged one channel?
Yeah. What we're seeing is that oftentimes a lot of the companies that have the dollars to produce these TV spots, right, have really solid marketing strategies and really solid core claims documents and all the things that they need. And these claims are put throughout all of their materials. And so right now, I know everybody who was served a letter is deep in the weeds of going through kind of a full sweep of every single piece that they have out there, which is a heavy lift. And so it definitely is touching everything. It's not just that TV ad that they have out there that they have to stop running. I would say it's a majority of the pieces that they have in existence.
I don't know. My mind is kind of blown on all of this, to be honest, because I feel like it's so disruptive. Like, I can't imagine coming into work one day after, because some of these commercials and marketing materials, it's not just the production, it's the entire strategy behind it. Like, so many things go into it. I mean, the one I was watching was Morgan Freeman. Like, they probably spent $10 million to get Morgan Freeman on that. And now they just take it down. I mean, I can't imagine coming into work and just being like, every single marketing piece that you've done, we have to take it down. We have to stop and we have to redo it. So I guess I have a lot of questions, but are you feeling this on your end, Shannon? Like, have clients been reaching out to you? What are their primary concerns? Like, what's your pulse as somebody who's been living and breathing this for so long? Like, and also, is this one of the crazier things that's sort of happened in your experience, or is there always kind of shifting tides and stuff like that happening?
Yeah, I'd say there's always shifting tides, but this is pretty interesting. Like I said, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. I think they're going to continue to tighten the rules and regulations. And so if I were sitting, in the manufacturer's shoes, I would be thinking about, do we need to proactively look at our claims and proactively look at our strategy to make sure that we're thinking about some of these core things about, simplifying language, about really putting ourselves in the shoes of the consumer and speaking to them in a way that's digestible. I would be looking at those educational tools like the patient support programs and services that we offer, and how do we utilize that within our pieces to really help drive engagement. So if I had not been served a letter yet, I would probably proactively be looking at this so you weren't caught in a situation that became extremely difficult to manage. But for those teams that are in those situations, it is, and it's been a lot. I know as a partner to some, we're helping them work through it. and helping do some of that deep dive with them to try to take the lift off of their plate because it's actually overwhelming. So I would say if you're in this situation, lean on your partners, pull in all of your strategic resources and ask for help because you're going to need it just to get everything recreated and up to par based on the new FDA regulations. So it's a lot. I would say to anyone out there who's listening, who's going through this, try to frame it up to your team about how this can really help build trust with patients and how they can reshape their strategy and get ahead of the curve with people so that they can really be at the forefront of some of these decisions that are happening and make changes before they're being forced to make changes.
Do you have any concerns that this is just the beginning of changes? I mean, should people be thinking 2 steps ahead, marketers who are working at pharma companies? Because again, there's so much investment that goes into all these marketing materials that they do. So what if they go back to the drawing board, redo all of these things to be compliant with today's standards? But, I guess, is it possible in the future that things become even more stringent, or do you think we're kind of at the end? Okay.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's going to get tighter. And so being more proactive, thinking about how you can look at your own strategy and your own claims and your own advertising before you're asked to do it by the FDA is probably where I would start as a pharma company. But I really think, as we shift forward with this administration and who knows what administration is going to come after that, things will continue to tighten. And it's something that we have to just be prepared for and be ready for and start to think about really putting ourselves in the shoes of the patient and building that trust.
So if I'm a marketer at a pharma company, not only do I want to think about how can I make my marketing material good for now, today's new rules and regulations, right? But always, also thinking future forward. What are foundational things that will always remain true? And what I mean by that is, what is always going to be fair game? I know you mentioned plain language, balance. Like, is there certain foundations to how you work and help people that you think are always going to be safe? What are the things that will remain unchanged? What's always going to be fair game? I'm
Yeah.
assuming putting the patient first is always fair game. And so, yeah, how do you think through making marketing content evergreen so a pharma company never has to worry about this again?
I think education, it goes back to that. So if you put yourself as a pharma company in the role of the educator, your campaign should always focus on raising awareness and giving patients the tools to have a better, more informed conversations with their doctors. So if you're doing things from an educational standpoint and you're thinking about putting yourself in the patient's shoes and you're delivering tools for them to succeed or for them to have deeper conversations, I think you'll always be successful. So that's an easy one to always go back to. Honestly, besides that, it goes back to the patient support services. It goes back to the affordability programs and the resources. So continuing to promote those and showcase those because those really do help patients that can't afford their medicine. It helps patients get on, be prescribed the drug. So I would say that's kind of the biggest piece. And then, like you said, the balance is a huge thing, right? You've got to be able to present benefits, but you also have to show the risks. And you also have to give patients that full picture of what they're up against. It can't just be this person walking through a field of flowers, smiling and trying to, exude hope in something that is really a hopeless disease. You have to balance it. And I'm not saying you should have an image of someone, bawling in the corner and crying, but you've got to rein it into a way that showcases the right tone for the message that you're trying to convey.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I love that. And I think, you work with so many different pharma and biotech companies, and I might catch you off guard a little bit with this question, but I'm just super curious. When they come to you for help with their marketing, branding, communications, what do you find over and over again is sort of the biggest mistake that they're making or our biggest mistakes?
You know what I think's interesting? It's not even mistakes. So I would say a lot of these companies that we're working with are extremely sophisticated, really intelligent people. And so that's really engaging and fun. I think what the challenge is going to be, and where I think there's probably a gap in the industry, is with every company you work with a different legal and regulatory team. And depending on who's on that team, the gray area can shift. And so at what point is there something that's created that helps eliminate that gray area and doesn't leave that gray area up to these pharma or biotech companies, but puts it in a way for them to easily eliminate the grayness? I think there's obviously an opportunity within the industry, and not just as a patient kind of looking at the claims that they're putting out and looking at the advertisements, but as a company, if I was sitting in the CEO's shoes, I think that's one of their biggest risks. That's one of their biggest challenges, is making sure that they stay compliant while still delivering the right amount of content and information, but still doing it in a way that's effective. I mean, sometimes you have a banner ad, which is in a social media post, and it's tiny. And so all of the different compliance guidelines that you have to stick to, where you have, sometimes you'll have the scrolling ISI. You'll have all these different things that need to be implemented. It's difficult. They're up against a really difficult challenge, but I think it's going to be interesting over the next 1 to 3 years. How will AI really help us tighten our legal and regulatory claims to make them extremely compliant within the industry? And I think there's a big opportunity there to not just clamp down on pharma companies, because that's not it at all. I think they're really doing a great job of trying to help patients, but I think it's more about helping them ensure that they stay compliant. So there's definitely an opportunity. I think in the next 1 to 3 years, like I said, I think we will definitely tackle it. But it's just a
Mhm.
fascinating world, and it's interesting to watch the different legal and regulatory groups that we work with have such a different interpretation of the law, truthfully.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a little bit is obviously this is a challenging point where a lot of these massive investments now are really under scrutiny. Like, do we have to pull them? Can we use them? Are they going to be leveraged as much as we thought? But looking forward, maybe it's also an opportunity for pharma companies to be thinking a little bit more about modernizing the way they build content. Like your point about AI is great, because instead of traditionally the way that content was produced, which is takes a long period of time, months, it's individual claims down at the individual channel level, an email, a banner ad, a website, there goes 6 months to a year. Could we be thinking about building more modular content so that we can get to derivative versions quicker, so that if future forward there's changes by the administration, there's new rules and regulations being imposed, pharma companies have the ability to be able to pivot quicker because they have a nice foundation of content which they know is rigorous as it comes to like the PRC landscape. And then it can be much quicker to get to kind of a derivative version of whatever the administration is asking you to get to.
Yeah. We're actually helping one client right now take all of their claims, pull them apart, take all of their different pieces and separate it all so that we can put ads together in a quicker, more nimble, thoughtful way.
That's great.
Yeah, which is great. So when things like this do happen, they'll be able to go into that system, change that claim, pull it out, switch it, whatever it might be, and then reassemble the banner ad, the print ad, the TV, whatever it might be, right? Radio spot, whatever it is, a into a format that's then approvable. So it's just starting to happen, but these are with the bigger, more well-backed organizations. But you think about all of the thousands of companies that are a one-man show from their marketing perspective, or even like a team of 10, right? They don't have that. They don't have that ability to do that at this time. But I'm hoping with AI tools, all companies within the next few years will have the ability to maneuver quickly, and it's not such a lift.
I think if I was like a marketer and you'd said that, I'd be like, okay, thank you, Shannon. Like, here's something I can do. Like, I love that. Like, hey, like you actually have the opportunity now to be able to like reset a little bit, to build more foundational tools. Here are
Yeah.
the things you can do. Here's how AI can help.
Yeah. We're at a really pivotal moment where AI is really kicking in. We're able to build different bots within AI to help teams accomplish exactly what we're talking about right now. So I think, 5 years from now, if this happens, we'll be in a much different place. But today, stuff like this is an extremely, extremely heavy for an organization to take on. And if you think about it, it's really the job of these marketers to step in and handle this and manage it. And it's quite overwhelming for these teams. I mean, truthfully, my heart goes out to them because it's a large ask in a very short amount of time.
Do you see a world where this could expand to the professional side?
I think we're going to see I think we're going to see so much stuff in the industry in the next 3 years. I think we're going to see a tightening of really just what's acceptable in the marketplace. We're going to see HCPs demanding more personalized content. We're going to see patients wanting to be spoken to in a more personalized way. So whether it's the FDA forcing these changes, overall, I think it's a really great shift. And I think it's a chance for all of us to take one step back to think about how we can, I always say, like, better partner with the world, right? Like, as a pharma company, we can deliver better claims and clearer language and better patient-centric materials. The same thing for HCPs. Like, how can we continue to evolve and grow and create things that are better for HCPs that can then deliver better care for patients, that we can create things for patients that then allow them to have better outcomes? Like, it's exciting to be in this industry, just seeing all of the changes coming, whether they're good or bad. There's a lot. It's an exciting time to think about how we can take everything that we're doing today and really level up what we're doing and transition into a more patient-centric focus so that we can deliver on why we are all here. Like, I know most pharma companies, when I work with them, the amount of heart that they have for these patients is indescribable. They literally will talk about putting patients at the center of everything they do. At the start of every meeting, they're talking about how this can help a patient. And so just keeping that same mindset, keeping that same positive thought of how do we continue to build trust and build that partnership with patients, that's where the magic happens. That's where we continue to, level up our game and deliver tools to patients that actually matter and that they can understand. So even though this is really heavy for these marketing teams right now, I really think in the long run, it's going to be something that's going to be great for everybody.
One thing I'm actually curious from both of you guys is AI in the pharma space. And this is coming from a super rookie when I compare myself to you guys when it comes to pharma in general. One of the things I always thought with AI is that pharma would be quite slow to adopt because it's so regulated and you can't trust a bot.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the whole quote of nobody ever got fired for going with IBM. Or actually, the story I like to tell with this is I believe it was BCG, one of the big three consulting firms. They got paid like $15 million to change HBO Go to HBO Max, and then eventually they went to just Max. And they made another 10 million off of that. And then they went back to HBO Go. Like, it was like they dropped like 45 million on having these consultants just like change their brand, and that they ended up right where they started. But if you're a CMO or whatever, you can't really get fired because you went with BCG. You went with the top consulting firm or one of the big three. It might not have been BCG. And so that's how I sort of think about pharma companies when it comes to AI. It's like they're willing to spend tens of millions of dollars to put it through actual trained lawyers and have everything go through this super involved regulatory process and approval process, where they'll be the last to trust a bot or AI. Or at least that's how I think about it. So I know you guys have both sort of mentioned AI, and maybe Shannon, you could take this first. Where do you actually see benefits in AI in terms of pharma and pharma marketing?
Yeah.
And is there truth to what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's tough. The pharma landscape in general is so regulated that AI, even though it's this amazing tool, it's such a great thing. But when you think about a pharma company and the amount of security and HIPAA laws and all of the compliance that has to happen, like, hearing the word AI with those has to terrify some people at the organization, right? Because AI is like this, open AI, anybody can access it. Your data can be leaked or released, and it's all very secure right now. And so I think there's got to be a way for pharma companies to feel safe and secure with their information, and also with being compliant with HIPAA laws and all the other things, before they can fully adopt and really give way to AI and allowing it to help do some of the things that it's fully capable of doing. I do think pharma is going to be one of the last industries, just because of the regulations, that's going to be able to adopt AI and get it in place in a way that is effective and that's also secure.
I agree. And I think it's never going to be like the way, Eric, I think you're describing is like AI completely takes over from like an operating structure and an
Yeah.
execution perspective. I think even now, it really depends on the use case. With a couple of clients, actually, this was very much with the regulatory team. We use AI as like as an assistant. So like what we were actually doing to prepare for some of this news was to train an AI on the regulations and use it as a filter for any new content before it got to PRC. So you can shave down time. So instead of it taking 10 days for a person to review a claim or a new asset, you can use an AI tool to actually review the copy and the creative relative to the organization's restrictions and flag things quicker. So you go from 10 days to 3 days. That's useful, right? It's always going to end up with a human, but it's going to narrow the time and the money actually when it comes down to hours for getting something from inception to approval. The other interesting way that AI can be used from like a content perspective is translating an approved claim from one asset to another really quickly. So let's say you have like a banner ad which is approved. Instead of going to a designer and asking them to create the same claim, but then lift that and put it in a website page, AI can do that quicker. You're going to need then a human to come in and actually refine it. But again, it can slow down the time where typically something took 4 weeks to 2 weeks. And that is an advantage.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, and could be wrong with this, I think as AI helps us become quicker and more efficient, we're going to continue to get more personalized. So even though the volume is going to shrink, the increase in personalization is going to grow. And so I think that's what people are kind of forgetting, that the more we get into personalized content, personalized information, and everything becomes direct to each person, we're going to need AI to be able to deliver that much personalization to each person, because it's what we're all expecting. We're all expecting it in any points of our lives for everything to, say our name, to know who we are, to know everything about us when we start to engage. And so as much as I think AI is going to be amazing, we're going to actually need it to be able to deliver that high level of personalization. So maybe you only had, I'll make this up, maybe you only had like 3 segments before for a banner ad. Now you might have 46 segments, so that the level of work is going to grow to offer that personalization to every patient or every HCP. So that's where I think it's going to get really fascinating.
That's awesome. Sort of tangentially related, LinkedIn just rolled out the ability to target people's names, job titles, companies in the ad. So next time you log on LinkedIn, you get an ad. It could say, hey, so in the ad, it would say, hey, first name, did you know that we are hiring job title? So it'd be like, hey, Shannon, did you know that we're hiring presidents for this whatever service we're offering? So the personalization will match on the ad platforms. And so if you can have the actual creatives match it as well, that's super cool. I also, another tangentially related thing, but Paul just sent this to me and I found it to be pretty hilarious. There's a new term going around called AI slop. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but right now junior hires are down like 23% and senior hires are up like 17%. AI is taking a lot of these junior level jobs. So for example, Ollie, you were saying like it can take, writing an ad or a script or transposing or whatever, take it from 4 weeks to 2 weeks. But now you have a senior level person who has to review it. And of course, all the junior level stuff is done. And so what senior people are experiencing, and the term that I just heard, which I feel like we'll start hearing more, is having to review AI slop, where it's just like, this is good and it's better and it was faster, but there's so much more human review happening than ever before.
I was talking to someone the other day and they were worried about how is AI going to come in and change the landscape and what's it going to look like. And I said, this has to be the same as how it felt back in 99, 2000, whatever, whenever, the internet hit. And everybody was so worried it was going to dominate the world and take things over and all the jobs were going to be lost. And instead, what happened is, people used to go to work from 8 to 5 and they went home. And unless their home phone rang, their work was done for the day. And it was only an emergency, right? And then everybody started using the internet and it became where you are now kind of always on call. And then cell phones were rolled out, right? And now all of a sudden people can access you at any time. And so no one's ever going to go away. Like the whole world is not going to implode overnight. But I do think the ability of having information at your fingertips and having the tools that you need to be more effective are going to drastically increase. And so I'm actually fascinated to see where not only it takes us from an AI perspective, but from a search perspective and how that changes the way that we engage and interact with information, or it changes the way that we honestly do marketing strategies and the way that we think about content and information. And I think we're going to see in the next 18 months a huge shift in our marketing strategies. It's going to be pretty cool to watch.
Also, it kind of harkens back to your point around plain language as well. Like with AI and with ChatGPT and all of these different platforms, that's what they're going there for. Like complex question, tell me what I need to know in 5 seconds, in 5 sentences. In some ways, it's going to challenge the way that we're creating content as well. And like it almost comes back to what the FDA is challenging all of us to be doing in pharma as a whole, which is simpler, faster, swifter answers than potentially we were getting in the past.
Yeah. I think we've shifted to a world where there's so much data, there's so much content, you're almost overwhelmed with it. Let's simplify it and let's get to the point and let's make it digestible and easy to understand and give me the answers that I need so I can quickly react and decide whatever it is I need to do. It's definitely an interesting time to be in the industry for sure.
I have a final question for you guys. Do any pharma companies ever try to do anything with thought leadership? I know that they have support groups and stuff like that, but do they ever have someone who is experiencing like a particular disease or something like that, and they share their experience? What is thought leadership in pharma marketing?
Thought leadership is massive in pharma marketing. There's so many different thought leaders based on what the disease state is or what the drug is or whatever it is you're trying to discuss. But there's entire strategies at most companies just around thought leadership.
KOLs, key opinion leaders for ACPs, paid substantial amount of money to be an expert in psoriasis. And then you've got peer-to-peer roundtables, DOLs, digital opinion leaders.
Are the KOLs like doctors?
From an ACP perspective, usually they're specialists. And from a patient perspective, they're patients who are experiencing the disease, the symptoms, etc., and have had success with the drug.
Do you think pharma companies do a good job with that? Like, do you think they platform them well? Do you think they put ad dollars behind it? Or is that like too regulated?
There are definitely strict parameters around it, but a lot of companies do a really good job with it. But then there are thousands of companies that don't even have thought leadership. So it really depends on where each company is in their journey with thought leadership. But it's something that's going to continue to, especially with AI generated information, it's something that's going to play an even heavier role in someone's marketing mix.
I also think there's going to be fewer blockbusters for like massive diseases these days, like immunology and oncology. It's going to be much more like rare disease. And there is such a like dearth of patient voice in those rare disease, those orphan diseases. And I see that to be a big opportunity for a lot more of that in the future.
Ollie, I totally agree. In rare disease, that patient voice is so important. Yeah.
Okay. So one more thing that came to mind, and I just want to ask this. Do you think that it's controversial to say like, hey, I think this is good for patients? Like, are you in the minority with that? Do you think most people are frustrated, or do you think most people are saying, yeah, this is a good thing? Or is it one of those things where pharma, any company will get away with, they'll toe as close to the line as they legally can, because that's what their competitors are doing. And so I don't know, how do you think through that?
That's a tough one to answer. I would say in a competitive environment, of course, you're going to take the full breadth of what you can legally to make sure that you can showcase the full benefits of your drug. This is really difficult on pharma companies in the time frame that they've given them. And so honestly, my heart goes out to these companies, these marketing teams that are literally overwhelmed with trying to get this done in such a short time period. So to all those people out there listening, if that's you, if I could give you a hug, I would, and I'm sorry. I wish I could tell the FDA, these pharma companies aren't always these big machines that everyone thinks that they are. Like inside, there are these small teams trying to create all of these elements. And so if there could be a little bit of understanding from that perspective, and then if the pharma companies could also kind of take the reins from what they've seen coming down from the FDA and start to look at their own materials in a more forward motion, I think you put the two together and it could be a really great thing. But in the short term, it's really painful for these companies to make this shift so quickly. Long term, I think it is going to be better for patients. And that's my honest personal opinion. As a patient myself, right? We're all patients. What do we want when we're in these moments? We want a very clear understanding of the drug. We want to have a clear understanding of what side effects might be in the drug, and we want to know how it might be able to help us. So overall, I really do think it's going to be a good thing. It's just really tough in the short term.